No. Bé, bona tarda a tothom.
Okay, we are ready. Let me introduce myself. I'm Joan Xirau. I'm the Joint Director of the Anti-Fraud Office of Catalonia. I'd like to thank all the organizers for the opportunity to be the moderator of this interesting panel, this afternoon session. And we will deal with technology and good governance. Well, this afternoon session, we are going to talk about the integrity aspect. After this morning session, we wonder what to do now. What can we do now? All the institutions and also civil society, we will try to make our best for us to protect integrity and to have a much more robust integrity. What do we mean by integrity? Integrity means to incorporate all the necessary aspects to be in an harmonious situation. In our office this morning, we analyzed Bertrand Russell's sentence. When he talked about ethics and moral, he said that humanity has two ethics. On the one hand, we have the ethics that we say but we never put into practice, and we have the one that we put into practice but we never said it openly. So, integrity must be coherent. We have a high level of integrity amongst what do they do and what do they say. This is integrity, and also what they do on a daily basis. When we face and we find this integrity in an institution or organization, we can say that it is an institution that has an upright situation. I think that it is vital to see that technology opportunities that we have today, nowadays, it is always a great opportunity. And when we talk about some ideas that were offered by a panel, we had also in Barcelona digital influence conference in Barcelona about the role of integrity and how to improve changes in all the organizations. And in order to have a change, we need resources, technology, and motivation. With all the data that we have, with the amount of data that we create on a daily basis in our institutions, we took into account all the data given by the consortium and the amount of transactions, thousands and thousands of transactions and operations towards the administration. So, and also the accountability devices. So with the amount of data that we have today, technology still offers some great opportunities to improve integrity. This is not only a problem of resources, because the cost of these has to do with the development of apps. Data are useful. It's not a technological problem. We do have more than available technology to solve all the data and to see what are the data in all the administrations. And this is only, unfortunately, a problem of motivation and interest. So it is a place in the agenda. Today, a colleague of mine talked about the interfaces and the apps, the human interfaces. And she said, we must not forget the role of the interfaces. Interfaces should play a role in the development. From our anti-fraud office, we fight for the principle of integrity when we design our policies. So, When we think about integrity, when we talk about developing IT solutions in the public sector, must be developed when we design something new. If we do have a functional design and idea, and it's started by several public institutions, we do have a lot of public institutions that work in the IT sector. They create apps for the public processes, and if we don't have an integrity in these apps, this is an obsolete app. It's nonsense. Technology should favorize to find an integrity solution, and the pressure of the citizenship and the good governance should make us to behave this way. So we do insist in the idea that when we design public apps and solutions, we need to include integrity. The European Union is all the time asking to include the concept of integrity, and also we must do it when we develop and when we create some apps. Today we will count with 4 different perspectives, different organizations that use public information, 3 organizations, public institutions, public organizations that use public information in order to improve integrity, and to improve also the structure of civil society that helps public administration to find new solutions to improve integrity when dealing with the daily work at the administration level. Well, we will have the occasion to analyze 2 projects that create a relationship between the value of the public structures, the ethics, fighting against fraud, fighting against corruption, fighting against irregularities through the utilization of technical devices and technologies. This is a prerequisite in the 21st century. It's nonsense in 2021 to install inside the public administration a management app that has to do with budget, funds, public procurement, with any other aspect. It's nonsense to start this kind of apps without including integrity, without incorporating integrity, control, and supervision. To do it so, Eliezer, I'd like to introduce you before Eliezer García Rosado Bordallo. Eliezer works in Paris in an organization that we do know very well, and we envy you as an institution. You work for the High French Authority for Public Transparency. You are the director of this institution. You are from Spanish origins, and you are a national citizen from Spain. You worked for the competition general direction, and also for another institution that has to do with the same institution but in France. You also worked for the European Union, and lately, today, for more than 3 years, you work for the High French Authority as a responsible for lobby control and for this high authority institution. And she's going to talk about the work that they are making possible, and she's going to underscore the main technical aspects and instruments that they use. Eliezer, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I do have a presentation. Okay. Thank you for sharing this presentation. First of all, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Transparency Agency. As I was telling to Gemma, when I began 3 years ago this new work, I wanted to see what did you do here in Barcelona and to get some inspiration. 3 years later, I'm here. I'm still getting some inspiration from Barcelona, and I hope that this inspiration will be mutual. I am the lobby control director and the high authority for public life transparency in France. I'm going to make a very short introduction because I do guess that many people do not know about this authority. Well, it is quite a young authority. It appeared in 2014, and the main mission it is to control public figures and also to control the incomes, the property of these politicians and public servants, to control all the issues related with going from the public administration to the private administration and vice versa, to promote transparency. And the last mission that appeared at the end of 2016, and I'm the responsible for this role, it is to manage the registry of the groups of interest, so the lobbies. Well, we are more than 62 people. We have a chair, 2 secretaries, 2 joint secretaries, 2 entities for control, and we do have some secretaries and the administration workers. We also have direction, the legal, also civil servants that come from the public sector, and they also deal with the swing doors, and the Directorate for Control that mainly works against lobbies. And we also have a board that takes decisions. We've got a meeting every 15 days. The most important decisions should be taken together with all the members of the order, together with our president. Let me talk about my registry. What is the main goal of this registry? Many people say, well, this is more work, more bureaucracy, you have to declare everything, this is nonsense. Well, I do not agree with that. But there are main 3 principles and goals for this registry to be very useful. First of all, the High Authority for Public Life Transparency always aim to control morality, ethics of public responsibles and politicians, and also to take into account the role that they play with the private corporations. The main goal was to create more transparency between the public and private domains. Secondly, we wanted to be more open. We all know that the big lobbies, they can have always connections and meetings with the public administration in an easy manner, much easier than small companies that want to get in touch with the public responsibles. Since the information are published, the civil servants should be more open and they should get visits and to have meetings with any kind of groups of interest. The third level has to do with ethics, to be able to better control the groups of interest and the lobby, and also to get a better harmonization of rules when dealing with deontology and ethics. At the end of the day, what we are all seeking, well, we want to know what are the main interests that have been protected and what has been taken into account when we took a public decision, who represented the interests, on behalf of whom, what was the purpose, and thirdly, what are the financial means that were used to defend those interests. The main problem is that the concept of lobby is quite a complicated definition, mainly in France. What is a lobby? It can be an individual, a legal individual. If we talk about a legal person, we are not going to talk about the activities of these individual, but also the physical members inside this enterprise company corporation. And in order to qualify a group of interest or a lobby, a legal person has to get an employee, a manager, or a CEO that creates a lobby activity. So lobby is someone that lobbies for something, right? So it's not myself that says this, it's the law that says this, that sets the definition. Not only to getting in touch with a civil servant, you should do it, it has to be the main activity of this person. So the activity occupies more than 50% of the work, and it has been always in touch for more than a year with a public responsible, with a public figure or, well, a lobby activity. What is that? It has to comply with 5 requisites. We need a connection that is created by the lobby group towards an individual aiming at having an influence on the decisions that will be taken. The requisites are very complex and it's difficult to control them, so we should see that all the requisites have been accomplished. I'm not going to give all the list of public responsibles. We have the members of the government, at the Congress, at the Senate, we have the MPs, the senators, the civil servants that work in the different assemblies, the administration authorities, those individuals that will take the decisions, not the lower range civil servants. The President of the Republic doesn't belong to this group of individuals, but the office of the President of the Republic, yes, all of the members of the office, and also the highest ranks, such as the General Director of the French administration. The local responsibles are not included, but they will be included from July 22. If we have looked to the list of public decisions, this definition is kind of a long list because we have almost all the French institutions, but there are no answers to the public tenders. An answer to a public tender, it's not a lobby action. All the administration resources, the demand for an authorization, and the European directives as well. Once we assessed that the legal person and the physical person corroborates all these requisites, they have 3 obligations. They must be in the registry, they must declare on a yearly basis the lobby activities that they develop and the financial means that they use for these activities. And the 3rd obligation, it is the obligation to respect the ethical rules. All these activities, the registry, it's a digital registry, and everything is declared. So a legal person has to get inside the registry, has to introduce specific information, so kind of basic information, and it has to declare all the activities that he or she develops. And there is something very interesting, which is the technological part. The technological aspect and also the use of AI. When we talk about France, we do not declare all the contacts towards the civil servant. We declare the goal that we want to reach. So, if I'm a Coca-Cola Corporation and I get in touch with the Ministry of Agriculture, with the General Direction, General Directorate of whatever, so I'm only going to declare a purpose, a goal, to recycle or not to recycle the Coca-Cola cans. So I do have to declare what's my goal and what I'm pursuing, and not all the contacts that all the connections that I got with the public authorities. So we deal with the goal, not with the individual. So this is kind of a tricky thing because it's very difficult, and the lobbies, usually some of the lobbies, they have problems when declaring properly what they do. Each and every one of the goals must be declared in a file for separately the different activities that they develop. So we have a specific file, we detect what are the lobbies. It has to start with a sentence with a verb of action: to raise taxes, to annulate, to postpone. We are asking something to the administration at the end of the day. We must use an understanding vocabulary, not a very technical one, and in every file we should include the public decision that was taken. that's an optional aspect. Let me talk about some examples of a correct declaration. So to reduce the amount of taxes, a new railway agreement, to simplify the criteria to get something, to broaden the job reforms, to increase the amount of the funds for training. So, as you can see, when I read these kind of declarations, we know what the corporation was looking for. We know what they are aiming to when they have a meeting with a civil servant, to have a new classification as a protected area, to neglect the obligations, to promote the energy renewal. All these goals are adequate to us. What kind of declarations that will be considered as incorrect, such as protect the environment? We are all in favor of protecting the environment, right? This is not specific. Protecting the consumer. Assessment and monitoring the meetings. This doesn't say anything about what we are pursuing when we meet a public servant. To present an amendment. Yes, that's the work of a group of interests, of a lobby. This doesn't offer any kind of information. To promote the interest of the textile industry. What are the interests? We need to be much more specific. We are not giving any kind of information. To translate this directive or the other directive. Well, to introduce my company in France and the challenges for the next months to come. This is not a specific information interesting for a public servant. Well, we don't know what are the interests of the corporation. We don't know what the corporation and the company want. Also, to warranty the exploitation warranties. Well, these kind of sentences are not correct at all because they do not offer any kind of useful information for citizens. So, in order to declare correctly, we put into practice and we created an algorithm that learns from and gets the information from the different declarations. The first exercise that was held in 2017, there was someone that assessed and read 6,000 files, 6,000 goals, and he realized that at least 60% of the files were not correct at all. So it was a fake information. So we set this algorithm, we set some criteria. I'm not going to offer you all the details because I'm not any IT guy, so I don't know how to define the strategy. So we assessed the level of pressure of the decision that was taken, what was the role of the civil servant, what was the final intention when we read the file. We offer a grade from 0 to 4. We assessed a little bit what the human being was making possible, and we compare it with the machine information, and we allocated some criteria to the machine for the machine to be able to assess the files as a human would do. In the end, we had like a binary system, correct, incorrect, and once the algorithm assessed the file, offered a feasibility index, so 60%, 70%, 30%, whatever. So this algorithm is an algorithm that learns, and we assess 6,000 files. We analyze more than 60,000 files, and we had to compare it with all the declarations and the data sheets and what the algorithm considers as good or bad declarations. Today, 75% of the data sheets or files comply with the requisites that set the algorithm. So it really helps the lobbies to declare. Well, this is how it works, the algorithm. The lobby is declaring, and the algorithm, if it doesn't declare properly, the algorithm will say you are not correcting properly. So it offers some examples about how to declare. This is the part that you can find in the upper side of the file. And lately, what the lobby group doesn't see is what we can see, and it's a great declaration, or maybe because it's not a good declaration. This allows us to fit the algorithm if we do agree or we do not agree with the algorithm. When there is a bad declaration, well, we say to the legal person, you are not declaring properly. Why you are declaring properly? Well, we let the legal person know. This is the message that appears when he or she is declaring.
Entonces, el algoritmo lo que hace es ayudar a formular mejor los objetivos. So
the algorithm helps better formulate, and the lobby can declare that it is incorrect if the lobby deems it appropriate. The declarations are not blocked. Even if the algorithm says you're not declaring adequately, the person can confirm their declaration and leave it as is, even if it's considered incorrect by the algorithm, but it is recorded in the history of declaration. So when we control the declarations, we will see how the person declared and why they insisted on declaring that, even if the algorithm said it was not correct. The goal declared as correct by the algorithm can be controlled, monitored, and considered incorrect. So the algorithm will not replace a human being. The algorithm will help the interest group to better declare and to make their declaration meet the formal requirements, but it does not at all replace the control that we conduct as human beings, of 5 people who on a daily basis control these sheets, and some of them are considered correct by the algorithm, but we consider them incorrect because a person can correctly declare because they meet the formal requirements, but they may not be telling the truth, or they may declare much less than they should. So the algorithm is just an aid so that the person declaring knows how to do it, but it does not replace the human being. And the algorithm also should be constantly learning, so we need to feed it, we need to take care of it as in a couple. We need to take care of the algorithm so that it keeps learning and so that it further adapts to the demands of the humans. Okay, so thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Eliezer.
Thank you very much, Eliezer. And now we will connect remotely to Brigitte Bishop. Warning, Brigitte Bishop has prepared her documentation in French, but for interpretation purposes, she will present in English.
Brigitte Bishop és llicenciada en Dret per la Universitat.
She has a degree in law by the Ottawa University, and she is a member of the Bar Association of Quebec. But actually, most of her career, she's been a public prosecutor with the actions of the prosecution of her country. In 2017, she incorporated into the Office of the General Inspector of Montreal. General inspectors are unipersonal bodies that conduct control of the public activity, but these are the classic English-speaking independent authorities. These are institutions that we do not have here. We don't have anything similar. And since 2018, she's been working as general inspector in the city of Montreal. She's also worked on analyzing fraud aspects related to the procurement of technological elements, and this is the presentation she will be giving today.
Good afternoon, because here it's afternoon. I don't know in Montreal. What time is it now in Montreal?
In Montreal now it's...
Okay. Please, Brigitte, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed assisting to this conference, and I woke up very early and to watch and to learn from the other panelists, and it's very interesting. So thank you very much again to invite me. So my presentation is going to be about the.
Gracias.
Okay, so the objective of my presentation is going to talk about the risk and the challenges that there is when making a public contract with the involving computer and digital intelligence. I'll try to reflect on certain solution in order to assure a sound management of those types of contract and those type of services. Briefly, I'll talk to you about my office. Well, like you said in the introduction, the Office of the Inspector General was created out of the big scandal in the province of Quebec, Canada. And the office was created in 2014, but was actually in effect in 2015. So we're quite a young office. I'm the second Inspector General. Many of you know the first one, the one who created the office, which is Denis Galland. And I succeeded him as in the Inspector General of Montreal since 2018. Our main goal is to oversee all the contract, all the contracted process in Montreal, as well as the other societies that work, the legal entity that works in Montreal as well. So when we say oversee in Montreal, the particularity is that we have jurisdiction in the writing of the tender, in the tender as well, the process, as well as the execution of the contract. So we'll have to oversee in order to maintain the integrity criteria that our province put in as a value, and as well to prevent corruption in those public spendings. The sector of intervention, like I said earlier, is in all the contract in Montreal. So we can oversee the redaction, but we can go as well verify and the execution. So we have investigated that will go in the street just to make sure that the attendee execute the contract with the prescription that was asked. And sometimes we have the power, if not, we have the power to cancel the contract as well. So my power is to recommend certain solutions, and it can go as well as to cancel a contract if it's not executed well, or if there's an integrity matter and that was discovered in the investigation. Computerized and intelligent artificial intelligence contracts are quite of a challenge, because I'll talk to you about certain experience that we went to with the oversee of the tenders in that matter, and there's a lot of challenges, as you know. All the intelligence is in, like, you know, and all the computerized field are in constant evolution. So that creates a problem that, first of all, it's very hard to accept the changes. So what we see and I'm speaking about what I know from the city of Montreal, when it's time to change the program or to go with certain specified software or to go with artificial intelligence programs, it's very hard in the city. First of all, to understand the needs because it's so new, and then there's a lot of resistance in change. So there are people who are used to have, for example, a certain password. So now if you change the program, you need 11 letters instead of 3. So there's all those problems and adaptation that are needed to people in Montreal, to the employee, and we notice that it's quite hard on them. And so therefore, what happened is that we see that because of all those problems in implementation with the resistance to the change and the new, we notice that the manager and the city of Montreal will try to go with only one provider. They're going to try to choose a package deal with one provider in order to stop all those adaptation problems that you could have with multiple providers. Or what they're going to do with the provider that they have now, they're going to try to ameliorate, to perform, to ask them to make more performance with the old that they have to make new with old, basically. So what the problem we notice with the package situation is that it's gonna favorize the big enterprises because the local enterprises usually don't have a big solution, a package solution. They're gonna have small fields of expertise, but not the big picture. So usually when the city or when the manager will go to that type of solution, they're gonna exclude all the little companies that are trying to have contract with the city or with the province of Quebec. And what will happen is that we notice that it could place the organization, in our instance, the City of Montreal, in a dependent position. Because if you give everything, if you give the key to a computer to one company, you might be stuck with that company and all the effect that it is. If you need new stuff, they're gonna impose it on you. We all have providers, we all have personal phones or computer, and we all know what it is about when you have business, you make business with only one provider, you are stuck with that and you have a dependency to all the services that they're gonna offer. So what we figured is that it might not be the best solution when we talk about public spendings. And so we noticed in our investigation about that matter, three areas that could be problematic. First of all, the specification in the estimate. Before doing a public tender, there usually the city or the government will ask for specific specificities that could be dangerous. We secondly noticed that the experience clauses sometimes could be problematic, and the contract, the term of the contract that could be problematic. That all could have made together. We could have integrity problems with that. And so, as for the specification and the estimate, the problem that we noticed is that, and we have a public case that is on our website about the situation that we noticed is that the contract manager of the City of Montreal went with a specific firm and asked them to specify their needs. But what happened is that it is so scientific that we end up with 77 criteria that was like totally very, very specific. But we noticed with our investigation shows that the criteria were so specific that it tended to favorize only one provider. And we discovered that that provider was working with the firm that the city hired. So the firm wasn't objective, and they really tried with the specification to favorize only one provider. And so obviously it was put to our knowledge by a competitor. So when we analyzed, we realized that in fact, yes, the specifications were much too excessive and were eliminating all the concurrence. So that's a problem that we noticed. And so as for the solution, in our public report, we asked that the city would evaluate a better evaluation of the need, but maybe right first of all within the city, within the government, to see to make a survey to maybe analyze the needs before going to a firm and just ask them to do our job, and then maybe ask a solution from other firms. Just consult a lot of providers just to know what's on the market and what would be possible to have, and that would be for us maybe a better practice in the specification. I'm not saying that you don't need any specification, but what I'm saying is that you have to be very careful when you make too many specifications. You have a tendency to create a monopoly within only one provider instead of opening the market. It could very drastically close the market. So that's one of the problems that we've noticed. Again, the experience clause, that's a problem that in Montreal we saw in many contracts, especially in artificial intelligence. Because we want the best, we're gonna ask in our tender experience that is sometimes very exaggerated. The example that I'm going to give is like we asked if it was only for the cloud, and there are little small providers that can provide that service. But the city of Montreal in a contract was asking for experience in over $25 million project. The estimate was under $1 million. So the 25 million experience obviously favorized only maybe one or two known provider or companies, but all the local company couldn't compete with that. And so we were able to analyze that and to convince the project manager of the city of Montreal that maybe his experience clause was a bit excessive. And so therefore we were able to change that clause. And it's very important, and you'll notice it's not because of it's not an integrity matter. It's a in my book, it's to open the market and to permit the local company to have access. Like I heard earlier in the other panel, I think it's important to open the market. I think that the artificial intelligence, all the computerized community, there are a lot of small enterprises that are as good. And so I think in order to open the market, we need to be very careful with the experience that we're asking. I'm not talking about competence. I'm talking about sometimes we need the experience in other contracts is sometimes very, very exaggerated, like I told you in my previous, what I just said. And you can see we have a public report to that effect as well. And so the solution for that we preconize is to sometimes when a contract is evaluated, there's a lot of subcontract. When you evaluate clearly and very thoroughly your needs, you're going to be able to see that you might maybe, if you need a license to operate and the cloud and other types of services, maybe if we fragment the contract in order to have more small contracts, it could open the market, it could favorize the local industry, and it will prevent a monopoly in the management of our intelligence contracts within the company or the government. So that's one of the solutions that we recognize in Montreal as well. The other problem that we notice is the long-term contracts, and that's a problem that I saw in a lot of contracts, a lot of public contract with computerized company or with providers. what we understand is that because I said earlier, because of the problems with the resistance to change, because of the adaptation that it takes when you change a provider, when you change a service, when you change a program. Because of that, well, in the public sector, I'll talk about Montreal, but what it was preconized was to have the longest contract. So they attach themselves to one provider for 20 years. And that's a problem that obviously we notice, and it's going to close the market, but it's going to create, again, a dependence. And I don't think that with having that long-term contract, I don't think it's going to help for the development. I don't think that the city will have the best, I don't think it's at the best interest of the city and of the taxpayer. For example, I have an example that we just, it's a case that we just did in last May. The Transportation Society of Montreal in 2003, back in 2003, they had a contract with a company to the electronic passes to go into the buses and the train. And so they had this contract with that company, but the contract was a contract of 10 years with 3 possibility of renewal. So if we add all the renewal, it's a contract about 18 years, which is incredible. And so we had a complaint from a competitor saying that, well, maybe in 2003, it was a relatively new technology, but now it's, well, you all know that in computer, in the electronic world, a year is like 100 years. It goes so fast. And so all the other company were complaining to office saying, well, there is no tender, there's always renewal, we don't understand, the technology is obsolete. How come there's the Society of Transportation still doing contract with that company? And so when we investigate, we noticed that, in fact, the Transportation Society of Montreal attached itself with a contract that was for 18 years. And so there was no way for them to get out of it, and they're stuck with it. And so what we did is that we noticed that there was a renewal possibility, so we asked them not to renew it and to maybe, try to diverse the offer. And what with the collaboration of the Society of Transportation, we noticed that, in fact, they attached themselves to one provider. They were stuck with that technology. It was, in fact, very problematic because it was obsolete. Because with the new chips in the credit card, it couldn't go. Nobody could pay. It was a nightmare. And so I think it's the best illustration when we say that the duration of a contract should be considered and should be in the most exception way to have a long contract. We propose maybe 2-3 years of contract, or if it's a big project, maybe 5 years, and then the experts don't agree that 5 years is they think that it's too long. But I think that's one of the most risks that a public authority can have with the long term of the contract, especially in the electronic and that's what we saw, and we still see in Montreal. So now we're overlooking all the terms of the contract to see what's the possibility. And so that's one of the biggest risks, I think, that there is. And it's always, what's to tend that is always a good intention. People will try to have the longest contract because it's so complicated. I'm sure everybody went through that. It is so complicated. Even in our little house, to find a provider to see what's best for us, it's a world. It's another world, another language. So because of that, usually the public manager will go for the long run, which obviously I think it's the worst thing to do. And it's going to attach yourself to a provider, which is not, I think, the best. There's no competition, there's nothing. So there's a lot of this. And so in reasoning, I'm going to go through, I'm speaking very fast. What I'd like to say in conclusion is that in order to have the best management, to be in a best management position, I think that first of all, the needs, we need to really, really define our needs, sometimes with an independent company that is not involved with a provider, just make a survey to understand what's going on, because I think we should go with the performance needs and not a wish list and not some things that is not rational. So I think that we really need to understand and to work and to find out what are the needs, and then have realistic criteria. There are criteria, sometimes it is a red flag, believe me. When you see, like I told you earlier, that we see a tender that has 57 criteria under, obviously there's a red flag. And when you look at the criteria, they are so not real, like I'm going to give you for an example, we have like for the password, one elimination criteria was that the provider had to provide a possibility of a password up from 9 to 20 letters. That's not a criteria. That's only something to eliminate others. It's not, doesn't have to do anything with the performance. And so that's a red flag sometimes. That I think that is something that when you oversee a contract, you should see and should be aware of that. And second and thirdly, we have I heard that this morning earlier today, and we have the same criteria in Montreal is to try to facilitate for the local company, the small company, to have benefit from tenders and to have contract and to try to do business with the government. And I think that in order for the local company to develop, they need a chance. And so that's what I think, that sometimes maybe think a little smaller, or maybe try to rescind a contract and to separate certain needs could help to favorize the local industry. And so that's my conclusion. Thank you for listening to me. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer those.
Thank you for your presentation. Gemma, no sé si hauríem de fer-li preguntes.
I don't know if we have the time for questions. I don't think so. Let me double check.
Sí? Gràcies per la...
Anyway, thank you so much for your kind presentation, Brigitte. Thank you very, very much. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Because many of the aspects that you shared with us appeared in this morning session, but you were more specific. And also you talked about the comfort of the manager, right? This idea of comfortability. It's always very difficult to change, right? The mindset when we want to hire technology and all the contracts that last for 11, 10 years, which is a spectacular amount of years. Thank you very much, Brigitte. Thank you so much. Now we'll have the next speaker. Thank you very much.
El proper ponent és el senyor Jaume Far Jiménez. Jaume, yours is the floor. En Jaume actualment és el director.
Jaume is currently the director of the Anti-Fraud Office of the Balearic Islands. He has a degree in economic sciences, and he is a civil servant of the body of interventors of the state, and he has a broad experience in the tax administration. With Jaume, we have met in different initiatives linked to the network of anti-fraud offices that currently coordinates in Spain. The Anti-Fraud Office of the Balearic Islands has competencies that we look at with envy. These are the competencies of supervising all of the declarations of interest of the top managers, autonomic and local. in the Balearic Islands, and they have developed a system with different technological supports to oversee these declarations of interest. And Jaume, I understand this is what you will be presenting. Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me? Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Metropolitan area of Barcelona for having us here to tell you about the small tool that we have in our office. It is an honor to be here presenting in front of such a qualified audience and such top speakers that we've had throughout the day. The tool that we developed at the Anti-Corruption Office is a tool to comply with the law that created the office. It's an exclusive competency that we have as compared to the other laws of anti-fraud or anti-corruption offices, the one in Catalonia, Valencia and Andalusia. This is a tool basically for the detection of conflicts of interest. As you know, in order to try and manage conflicts of interest, there are several tools: the right to abstain, control of elected positions before and after being a public position, and one of them is the management of declarations and interests. And following what the law said, we created a system of declarations to try and create the registry and do the corresponding exploitation. And I will be as brief as possible. I will divide the presentation in 3 sections. The first one is about the design of the tool to obtain data. Secondly, how we advertise or publicize these declarations, and third, the control of declarations. Because if a registry such as this makes any sense, it is to make the adequate control of what has been declared by public positions, the declarations of their assets. In the Balearic Islands, all of the management of the asset declarations was transferred to this office. They brought a lot of boxes to us with declarations in envelopes that had never been opened. These were declarations, tax declarations that had been presented by certain people, but no one really knew what was inside those envelopes. It doesn't make a lot of sense in order to detect conflicts of interest. So, as I said first, I will tell you about the design of the tool for data capture. It is a tool such as this one. It is online. I accessed with my profile, with my electronic certificate. And what we have here is the profile of the declarant, the declaring person. We have a summary of what has been presented during the years this person has been in office. And then we have the possibility to see to make the declaration at the time of appointment, the termination declaration when the person abandons public office. Then we can make modifications, and finally the compulsory annual presentation of the tax declaration presented to the tax authority. A public person who initiates their career as a public person in a public position would access this second tab, appointment of a public position, and if they had been in a public position before, they do not need to present a declaration at the end of the previous office and another one at the beginning of their new term of office. It wouldn't make sense to present 2 declarations, they present only one. So there are 7 pages. One of them is about basic information of the person, then secondly, assets, and then the final pages are about activities and interests that may be of interest for our work. And here we should see which public body they have a position in. And some data are compulsory and others don't need to be filled out. Not necessarily. Here on the second page, we need to fill out public activities, for example, a public pension that this person is receiving. We always give them the opportunity to add any additional comments because oftentimes you declare things that need certain clarifications or additional explanations. Up next, we ask for private activities, and if this person is conducting activities for other companies or organizations, or as a freelancer, or if they receive any other sort of private funding, and then a section for comments to add more information. And then we have another tab for assets, vehicles, real estate, or if they have a stake in companies, life insurance, pension plans, certain rights and administrative concessions. We ask for information about companies, any sort of companies or societies that this person may have a stake in, individually or in his or her family, partner, offspring, indirect stakes in the companies that they have a stake in, and also members of the family with a stake in organizations that are contractors of the administration. This is what is compulsory as per the law. And once this declaration has been filled out, you can click the final button and the system generates two PDFs. One includes all of the data that has been declared by the person in office, and this document can be used by this person to justify, for example, their information with the person responsible at the town council, and then another with protected data, because this will be published in the transparency portal, and this we will talk about in a minute. About the possibility to present the tax declaration, they should present the same one presented to the statewide tax authority in the corresponding PDF format, and the system allows you to upload a declaration, or if it is an asset declaration of the person in office or the partner, and you also need to include the year of the declaration. Some people do not have to present declarations. It's not usual to find persons in office who do not have to present these declarations. It's based on their income. Some small town council deputy mayors are in office part-time or they're very young, and in the previous 2 years they did not have to present these tax declarations before taking office. And finally you click send and you have presented this declaration. And this is the system we have for data obtention. And now I will talk about how do I exit this screen. The escape tab? No, it's not working. Okay, there we go. And now, secondly, I will tell you about how we advertise these declarations. These are public data. So I've accessed our website directly in the section of transparency and recording of assets, where we can find the information we want. We can search by the name of the person we're searching or the body. Here we have the corresponding terms of office. And if we choose the Parliament, for example, we find the possibility to search all persons who've been regional ministers during the term of office. Some of them have abandoned Parliament before the end of the term of office, and we can choose any of them. And then we will see the tax declaration they presented and the time of starting office, and the public person who we will see all of the information, phone numbers, emails. That is not included. We will not include that information. And in the section of declaration of assets, we can purely see data that are relevant to the assets, but not protective data. For example, the property reference numbers. We have that information, but they're not published in the transparency website. Same thing about financial information. We do not include the bank information, although we have it in case we need it. For example, entities, we provide the name but not the reference number, and vehicles, for example, the type of vehicle but not the registration number. This is the information we find in this transparency portal. And if we choose, for example, an IRPF tax declaration, we have all of the data, the verification safe code, and in the data of the declaration, we anonymize them, we redact them, we suppress all of the, or we redact all of the information that could lead us to identify the home of that person, where they live, and if they have children that are tax deducible, we redact that information as well, whether the declaration is joint or individual, whether they donate to social entities or the Catholic Church, and we only include the information that is tax relevant or asset relevant. ID numbers, account numbers, property reference numbers are redacted. And this would be the transparency of the declarations, the transparency section. We have about 1,600 persons in office who have to present these declarations, and we manage the registry with this tool. As to the control process, and I will end with this, it is a stage procedure, starting with the most simple aspects and ending with the most complex ones. We started last year exerting control of the presentation of declarations. This is the simplest side of things. We don't need to investigate anything about the content of the declarations. And we started with Parliament and certain town councils. We tried to choose town councils of different islands. We detected 12 people who had not presented these declarations, and we asked them to present them. They did not fill out all of these obligations, and out of these 12 people, in 5 of them we started an administrative procedure because, for example, the declaration was not presented, but we did not have the information, and out of the other 7, 1 presented a recourse. We are still awaiting the decision of the administrative court, and the others had to pay fines of €1,000, so €6,000 in total. This is the simplest verification process, and the most complex side of things is checking whether the data presented by the person in office are accurate or not. We don't have many tools to check whether what has been declared is correct or not, but we do have some that are important. We have access to the cadastral data, so we can check whether a person has more assets than they declared, more real estate assets. We have access to the Social Security database, so we can see whether a person is working and for which companies. And we can check who are the employees that a company has at any given point in time to check the social contributions of this person in office. We also have access to the data of the DG traffic, and we have access to the Notary Public Council. We have access to the ownership database, so we can see who really owns a certain company. And we also have access to all of the public deeds for politically exposed persons, PEPs, the persons who have some public relevance. And with this information, we also have some databases, some mercantile databases such as Accessor, and we can find information about business or trade information in the trade registry. And we cross all of the data that we obtain with the declarations presented, and if it doesn't add up, if it doesn't match, then we start the requirements to correct the deficits detected. Yes, and in a final stage, in a more advanced stage, which has not been finalized yet, we cross-reference the information within the declarations, both tax declaration and asset declaration, and we also check the social media open data to detect any other potential assets or stakes that have not been declared. That would be all. Thank you very much, Jaume.
Un bon exemple de l'utilització.
So this is a great case when we use technology for control matters. I'm sure that the French authority will talk about very similar things. Yeah, it's very similar. This is the last intervention. I'll have to ask you for 10 more minutes because it's going to be very difficult to put an end around 5 p.m. Well, now we'll talk about civil society. We have amongst us Simona Levi, Director of Technopolitics and Rights in the Digital Era at the University of Barcelona, activist, theater writer, theater director. She's been a great collaborator with the Anti-Fraud Office of Catalonia. Thanks to her help, we started 5 years ago a great project, the Xnet, which is a whistleblowing system that allowed us to increase in a spectacular manner the claims and cases. I'd like to thank the Transparency Agency not only for your work, but also for this amazing occasion that we commemorate on a yearly basis. I'm going to try to be very brief because we do want to have a time for questions and answers, and we want to speed up the process. Well, shortly, if you do not know us, at Xnet, we are not a corporation, we are a civil society organization, mainly working for digital rights and social democracy. We're pioneering on the activism field for whistleblowers to let us know information in a safe and an anonymous manner. We had many cases, and the most known case has been the Bankia case that made us to put into court 65 politicians and bank responsibles. We have 15 amongst them in jail, and the former president of the International Monetary Fund. So, well, as you can see, we learn in the field and how to use whistleblowers, and we are also pioneers when alerting. We are working we worked with the whistleblowers, how to better structure this whistleblower system, and we are also pioneering when applying this legislation. Today's topic, when we suggested with the institutions to install these whistleblowers, we began in 2015. The first experience was to put this mailbox for whistleblowers to work together with the municipality of Barcelona. Now they are compulsory, but when we proposed that, well, that an institution to use a Tor network, which is a network that allows navigating and to browse privately, well, it caused many problems. The whistleblowers that we offer to install, and these are whistleblowers anonymously. They are interfaces that organize the denounce, and also those whistleblowers that want to have access to documents and to offer in an adequate manner, and this can be made in a proper manner, in a privately or non-privately. So, when we talk about technology, the interface that we use allows us to collaborate. This collaboration, it's always non-interested, and the corporation, because at the end of the day, it is a corporation that allowed this technology. It is called the Global Leaks. In reality, this technology, it's a usable technology. We have this Global X and Secret Drop. We do prefer Global X because it's more user-friendly, and also the other platform allows private browsing. The whistleblower system allows to navigate anonymously and privately, and the institution should open the architecture, the internet architecture, to have access to the mailbox of Tor. Tor is not a special tool. Tor is an international voluntary network that mainly communicates, right? It doesn't go from the computer, the individual computer that we denounce straight ahead to the mailbox, and we see that there are some changes, and it is a normal thing, but it steps and goes through to other devices. So the origin never know the other extreme. So this is basically a simple mechanism, but it's a complex network, because this work at a national level, curatorial, to protect journalists and so on and so forth. So, from a technology perspective, I'd like to talk a little bit more about it. It doesn't intervene AI, and I do believe that the most important thing from the perspective on how we offer the contribution to the technology, and also we can continue the conversation with the whistleblower, and he protects himself. In this digital democracy, for the future, for the present, we are still very far
part de les institucions.
and how we are assimilating everything. The whistleblower, it's also an spokesperson, so we can unveil fraud, corruption, and abuses amongst a series of collaboration of an institution and an individual that can have access to the information of public interest, useful for the general interest without needing being paternalistic or trusting. We're talking against the system. It is important.
Es dona una clau, no?
With this mechanism, we have like a key, a password. It's like a credit card number, and the whistleblower can get in the system, and the investigators of the different institutions can ask for new information among citizens and institutions. With the municipality of Barcelona and the city council, in 2015, it was kind of an exotic problem, and now we standardize almost everything, and the law requires, and it says in an open manner that it exists this opportunity. The main problems that we had to solve for the last 2 years together with the Office for Transparency in 2015-2017, beyond
d'un mecanisme
reluctances from the internal system and also the use of
hem adaptat una eina que és una eina activista a
anonymity and to the legislation such as the administration that needs loads of transparency and due diligence. The administration requires that all processes to be in a PDF, but for the social activists, it's malware, this PDF. Therefore, we had to adapt the legitimate need of for administration transparency under a mechanism that is thought to be for something different. And this is the final result, and it is very interesting when we talk about the collaboration between activism and administration. As you can see here, there is a proliferation, and we created this tool to reduce the costs. Here you have the list of institutions that are already installing. They have already installed this tool. We already signed an agreement, and it's already operational.
M'interessa molt reprendre algunes coses de...
So this really inspired me.
Una qüestió molt important, que és la qüestió del software.
When we talk about technology, there is something very important, and this has to do with the open source. When we talk about integrity, and by default, this sentence comes from the new legislation for data protection that offers a new value, the tools that we use, the protocols, the institutional protocols that we must use, they should include human rights since the beginning of the creation. It's not a feature that you can change and you introduce later on human rights.
Ha de venir per disseny i per defecte.
So this has to come from, this has to be included by default.
Compleixen.
If the, when we talk about the code, the transparency, we're talking about the documents. If we want to translate this transparency into code, we only can do it through good governance. Open source code, because usability of the code, it is a distributed usability. What does this mean? The code, any citizen can verify that what's the institution promoting, when dealing with this administration tool, and really, is complying with the legislation, and not to believe in a paternalistic manner that the mediation between citizenship that will contribute to better surveillance, it is a fundamental feature of this era. That's why we have to insist on the idea that if we talk about design by default for technological infrastructures of the administration, the requisite of open source is something capital.
Una de les coses, un dels problemes que ens vam trobar un cop que tot...
Something essential. So, how did we start it, everything? We created quite an interesting tool. We wanted to replicate the tool with a very few efforts, very low amount of money, and for many years the administration told us that the corporations we asked for installing the in reality, we reassessed the prices and they were 10 times more.
Estructura tancada, que com es va dir abans, que es queda durant molt temps, administració cautiva d'un...
And the administration for a long time has been captive for a certain type of vendor when it wasn't really necessary. So this is why I am grateful, and I think what Madame Bishop said was very interesting. It's very important for institutions to work. Free software, open source has been relegated for a long time, and I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not a specialist in open source, but in terms of institutional transparency, it is an essential requisite, and we need to work on this so that it can be further exploited, and so that the local components, the ecosystem of the startups or the open source companies can develop. In Catalonia right now, there's a new tender of CETITI based on what Ms. Bishop said, the technology center of the Catalan government, that all digitalization in Catalan administration depends on. And the tender has been for 1.5 billion euro in a tender with 4 lots, 500 million each. The smaller one was 62 million. The smaller contract was 62 million. So the thing is here, how many companies in Catalonia will be able to benefit from this money, and how can Catalonia continue to work at the forefront, because all of this that we are seeing is happening in Catalonia. So in many areas we are doing a very good job. So how can we do it if investments in technology, in transparent administration by define and by default, is done in such a way that open source companies can never benefit from it? The good news about this tender is that it is for 2 and 4 years, not 10 and 11. This is why we now have 2 and 4 years to rethink the design of these and other things for a transparent digitalization, and in order to create an ecosystem that can maintain it in Catalonia so that we can make a difference. Thank you very much.
Moltes gràcies per la teva intervenció.
Thank you very much for your presentation. As I said, I will ask you for 10 more minutes. And now we will have a round of questions, of Q&A, if any of you wants to ask any questions regarding any of the talks. Gemma, please. Microphone, please. Good afternoon. I wanted to ask Brigitte a question and then another question for Eliezer. Brigitte, I wanted to ask you about the interventions that you explained, what degree of acceptance have they had by the receiving companies, the companies receiving your intervention? How much have they welcomed these interventions? And how has the contracting administration welcomed your interventions? This is the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, which have been the strengths in the positive responses? What factors have contributed to a good reception, to the receivers of your actions welcoming your actions, if there have been any strong points?
¿Haces la segunda pregunta?
Do you want to ask the second?
The way, is that okay?
Yes.
Well, the way that we handle it is, first of all, with the big technology contract. When we were aware of what happened, it's by the denunciation of people from the intern as well as other companies. So when my colleague just spoke about the whistleblower, it was very important in that case. The way we manage it is that because it's very sensitive, and we always we deal with people who are expert, and so we are not, so sometimes it can be tricky. What I've decided to do is I made them part of the solution. I think that's one of the secret. When we met the general management with the findings that we had, it was very clear. We had, like the 57 specification and stuff like that. Everything was very documented, so they couldn't argue. And so therefore they had to, I asked them for a plan. What are you gonna do? Can you, and I want to follow up, so I want to know what's going on. So we asked for that, and the power that I have in my office, it's a very small office, but I make public reports. So people are always scared about the public opinion. And so therefore I make them work with the solution. They provide and help us with a solution. And so, and I'm very happy to tell you that we're gonna end a few of those small contracts. There were all the licenses, and the company I'm not mentioning, but it was Google. And so they're gonna end the contract. I'm gonna end the contract in December with all the licenses, and they're gonna go in another tender for the provider of all the licenses, as well as the info, as well as the cloud. So I don't know if it answered the question, but I think that the way to work, like I usually say, I have a power to cancel contract, but I want people to be afraid of me. I want to be respected. We're aiming at respect. We're not aiming as to scare people. And I think that opening a dialogue and show the objectiveness of our investigation really helps.
Thank you. Otra pregunta.
Do we have another question?
Thank you very much, Brigitte. That was very clear. The question I wanted to ask Eliezer was about, but it was along the same lines as this question, in terms of elected positions in office, and this question is for Jaume. Honestly, what level of perception have you had? Has there been a change of culture from the beginning until now? Have there been initial resistances and a progressive acceptance? Are there still any resistances, and what are the elements of change to overcome those resistances? Well, I don't work with elected officials, but yes, at the beginning there were a lot of reluctances. The Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, for example, did not want to present his declaration, so we've had a lot of resistance. Now this is just part of what people have to do. People just do it. And it's true that there is a hotline, and sometimes people may be more or less nasty when they call about their difficulties when declaring, but it is just part of the ideology. This is one thing that has to be done, and that's it. So there's been a great improvement vis-a-vis interest groups, there was a lot of resistance at the beginning, especially in NGOs. They did not want to register or declare. And nowadays, they've realized that this valorizes their actions. It oftentimes justifies the rationale of things. And slowly but surely, it's being accepted as part of the things that are simply just done. We have the advantage that the declaration registers had already been implemented, so we just have adapted the model. It's a bit of a broader model than what they were used to, and we have not encountered resistances as such. It is true that with this increase of information, self-elected officials say, oh, well, but showing my data, showing that I have, for example, pictures at home that are worth 30,000 euro, is a bit, well, pieces of art that are worth 30,000 euro, it's a bit, well, conflictive, because they don't see my address in the declaration, but they may know where I live. And this, we have this double obligation, the one established by our law and the law of the local regime. So we want to implement a register that is only ours, and we have signed already 27 agreements. There's a pending question here. If there are no more, I wanted to ask a question, but maybe... Yes, go ahead. Well, but maybe the audience first. We have 2 questions, and after these 2 questions, we would finish with the Q&A session. Thank you. Good afternoon. The question is for Eliezer. You stressed all of the idea of the registry, and I think this idea of registering activities is very interesting. The interest group makes the declaration based on the purpose of their contact with the authority. So do you check whether these 2 match? What happens when they do not match? So one thing is the registration, but another thing is the follow-up, that they actually do what they said they would do. Yes, as I said before, the algorithm is the algorithm, and it controls the form, the formalities of what was declared. And then we have the control team that will check that this matches reality, the reality of what has actually happened. And it's not easy to control these sorts of things because we are not present in the meetings. We can request all sorts of documents. We can even travel and do home searches. We have not done so yet, but it is a possibility enabled by the law. So we have strong tools to check the truthfulness of what has been declared, but it's not easy to control. As I said, we do not participate in the meetings. Oftentimes, there are no minutes of what has been said during the meetings. And what we can actually request is receipts. We can ask the top managers what the meeting was about, but the actual truth of what happened in that meeting is very difficult to find out if you're not in the meeting, unless we do a home search and we find minutes of what actually went down during the meeting. We do research throughout the year, and we define in a spreadsheet. We include everything that we see in open source about meetings with top management. And since these statements or the declarations are done for the year before, the year after, we select a sample of companies or interest groups that we want to monitor, and we check whether what they declare matches what we observed the year before. And if that's not the case, we ask them to modify their declarations, their statements. For example, if they have seen a certain person in office, we ask them to state that. So it's difficult to check the accuracy of what is actually declared. Madam Bishop?
When you really need a provider, because in technology often there is something which is invented by a startup, a very concrete one, or a very specific prototype, And then what we see here is that you have to enter in this big, in fact, is the opposite of the problem, which I agree completely in your analysis, but then when you really need one provider because it's a young, new technology and you want this one, and you have to justify that you want this one, but you really want this one, then how you do it in order that it keep right. And then I would like to, quería preguntar, ¿cómo somos de sociedad civil?
How, as we are a member of civil society and we are an institution of civil society, to us it's very important to ask for civil society to make efforts. But what about the efforts that must be done in the agenda, in the government agenda? Because in Spain, the politicals, they only work from the perspective of their own agenda. And once they do have their correct agenda, we will work as civil society. And another question for Jaume. What kind of sanctions do you apply? Because we cannot see any sanctions at all for politicians to change for good. Madam Brigitte, can you answer the question, please?
Yeah, sure. What I think is that one of the solution when you want to specify a product, I think that you should go in performance and in French is performance you can describe what you want as the quality of what you want without, what we want to avoid is a list of criteria that are totally inobjective. But you can go by performance, what you want that product because of what? Because it's unique, because it's going to help to do something, because it, with all the criteria of performance will help. And then it's going to open the market, and yeah, maybe it's going to favorize only one specific company, but at least you're going to go with a list that is objective, that is what you need. You're going to put your needs in a list and not, as I said, criteria that are totally arbitrary. Does that answer the question?
Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sí. Bueno, el sistema francés.
Well, as for the French system, well, what can we say? It's not complete at all, because all the obligations are under the groups of interest, the lobbies. So the public responsibles, they don't have any kind of obligation. They do not have to look up the registry to see if there is a group that is listed, so they do not have to do it. They can ask to lobby groups that are not declared. So, and what about the question of the agenda? They don't have to declare anything at all. And secondly, as for the advertisement of the agendas, they don't have to publish their agendas. 2.5 years ago, there was an article in the Monde newspaper, and around 200-something MPs, they were engaged to publish their personal agendas. They never did it. Only a few did it. The majority of the ministers, they publish their agendas, but always in PDF and on a weekly basis. So this information, it's useless at the end of the day. And, well, so the agenda of the week, when you look for what happened 6 months ago, it's impossible to find the information. So public figures in France, they don't have responsibilities when dealing with lobby issues and groups of interest. As for the sanctions, we do have two kinds of sanctions. It's a sanction that goes from 1,000 to 2,000 when they do not offer the declaration of goods, and we do have another one, which is the most important one. It has to be published in the official gazette. So when it's published in the official gazette, the public opinion knows that this politician or a public individual has been sanctioned. All right. Well, without something that it's not possible to solve, it's time. 20 minutes later than expected, we have to close now. Loads of issues, loads of subjects. We talked about many things. It was very interesting. We started with Simona, with Madam Bishop, all the topics that we talked about it here in the panel. So this comfort zone of the IT provider and the public sector at the end of the day also creates a very complicated mix of interests. But that's all from our side. We do hope that we will have a fruitful seminar next year. Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you.